Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Profiles in Canada, the Scouts Canada web series, where we connect with Canadians who use their talents to the full for the greater good. I'm Kayla Moniz, and today we are here with the Right Honourable Justice Beverley McLachlin, who between 2000 and 2017 served as the Chief Justice of Canada on our Supreme Court and the first female Chief Justice. The Supreme Court is Canada's highest court in the land, and as such, Justice McLachlin was the highest ranking judge in Canada during her time in office. Before taking this mantle, Justice McLachlin was the Chief Justice of the British Columbia Supreme Court, and she served as a professor at the University of British Columbia, where she wasn't too far from the 29th St. Helens Scout Group and Pacific Coast Council, so shout out to them. Justice McLachlin grew up in Pincher Creek, Alberta, which, if it had a scout group, would be part of our Chinook Council. Justice McLachlin, I cannot tell you enough how much of an honor it is to be interviewing now that you join us on our show. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Lovely to be here and uh, in support of the Scouts, whom I admire very much.
Justice McLachlin, a big part of this show is to help young people across Canada find what they're passionate about doing. And so I wonder, how did you find your passion for the law?
It was by accident, but I think I was always cut out to be a lawyer. I was always arguing from the time I was a little person, and I remember my parents saying, you should be a lawyer or something. Although that was unthinkable, and it was more a joke than anything else because they didn't know any women lawyers, and I don't think they
Mhm.
really wanted me to be one. They thought I'd just do the usual thing and be a housewife or something. But the fact that I wanted to challenge every proposition, that I argued about things, that I uh, I enjoyed the kind of debate about public issues and private issues that is so characteristic of the law. I think was there from the beginning. And then after I did my undergraduate, I was looking around, was I going to do graduate work? And then uh, a friend whom I later married said, "You'd be a good lawyer," and probably recognizing the sort of qualities that I just mentioned. And so I went into law school and I loved it. And that was the beginning of my romance with the law.
A star was born.
Well, thank you for that.
What about, so you served obviously for 17 years on the Supreme Court. I wonder, was there anything about serving on the Supreme Court that surprised you? Anything that going into it you wouldn't have thought was the case?
Well, I guess how interesting it was. I had been a judge for some time when I went there, and I enjoyed being a judge for a host of reasons. But I was I entered the Supreme Court, I became a member as anyone would, with some trepidation. It's such a
Mhm.
big responsibility to weigh in on these difficult questions of national importance. And so I thought, oh, am I up to this, that kind of thing. But I was really surprised with how interesting it was and uh, how interesting it was to see how all the decisions came together and the dynamics of the different members talking about the problems and where that led one. To me, that was the most surprising thing. Just the method of working, which is different than the other courts I'd been on, because you're nine people, you're all seized with the same problem. You've got to work it through. You have nine perspectives, and just working that out was the real unexpected challenge of the Supreme Court of Canada.
As Chief Justice, you were the chair of the board in some ways. How did you find navigating for that consensus? How did you find bringing the different perspectives together when often you might be in disagreement with each other as
Yeah, well,
justices?
we have a strong tradition and a venerable tradition in the law a judge can dissent. We
Hmm.
don't have to get to consensus, unlike some other institutions. And dissents are actually can be a good thing, but what I my thought was we should not differ unnecessarily. We
Hmm.
should try to reach maximum consensus on what we can honestly agree on. And often people don't agree, not because they really have deep differences, or the ambit of their disagreement is greater than it needs to be. So
Mm.
we would work with many meetings and discussions to narrow the differences between people, and say, well, or maybe get listening is so important with an open mind. You have a judge will have their opinion, but they need to be open to listen to contrary opinions, and that may persuade them. And so through that consultative process, we were often able to narrow, in some cases, completely eliminate differences. And it makes a big difference. If you start from the position that each person is just going to go out and write what they think, you'll be promoting more differences. But if you can get that process going of talking about the problem and trying to achieve maximum consensus, you can maintain the strong tradition of dissents on a matter of principle and get maximum consensus in your decision making.
You are a champion of judicial independence. We're seeing, especially down south, there's a growing distrust in perhaps the independence of their judiciary. I wonder if you might discuss why it's so important to our Canadian democratic system, and then if you feel it's sufficiently protected here in Canada.
First, it's vital to our system, and it's vital to the American system.
Mhm.
People have to, a democracy has to have an independent judiciary, a constitutional democracy, particularly to decide those difficult issues of power, because everything is checks and balances of power. The president, Congress, and then the third branch is the courts. But the courts are charged with keeping everybody within the guardrails of the Constitution. And they have to be independent to do that. And they have to enjoy the respect of all parties.
Mm.
And I think there's still a lot of that tradition in the United States. You're seeing a lot of judges standing up independently and doing what they should do. It's far from lost, but in the public mind, there has been some politicization due to what appear to be political appointments, politically motivated appointments to the Supreme Court, and again, the fact they do elect judges, and judges in the state elections, some of them, and judges run on party tickets. So
Mm.
there's a less clear differentiation between the judiciary and the political arm in the United States for these reasons, but they are still independent. And in Canada, we have third branch of government, which is the judicial, and Section 96 of the Constitution guarantees that. And judges are independent, and there are a lot of mechanisms in place to make sure they are independent. Politicians can't tell them what to do except through the submissions of their counsel in the court. They can't talk to them, they can't put pressure on them. Judges have guaranteed salaries independent of what they decide, and they have tenure for a long time until they're 75. They can't be kicked out because they make the decision that the president or the prime minister doesn't like. So we have a lot of protections, and the most deep protection of all is the cultural protection. The people understand
Mm.
that judges have to be independent, and in Canada we have an enviable position because you can't point to any of our judges and say, well, that's a person who's
Yeah.
liberal or conservative or whatever. They may have some philosophical leanings, but nobody's associated with a particular party, which is good.
Which is a great thing. I want to discuss some of the work that you were able to do when you were the Chief Justice. Many of your decisions actually considered Aboriginal law and the growth of Indigenous
Mhm.
rights in Canada. In 1997, for example, with Delgamuukw case, you and your colleagues provided a framework by which land rights could be established even without a treaty. In 2014, you authored the opinion in the Chilcotin case where you said that Indigenous consent was necessary for any development on their land, which might be strange to our audience that that wasn't the case at one point. But I
Yeah.
wonder if you might discuss the current landscape of Indigenous rights in Canada. Where do you see it going forward? Where do you see the next steps happening?
Well, I haven't been following it perhaps as closely
Mm.
as I did before. Now that I am in retirement mode, but I think that we've laid down broad lines of jurisprudence dealing with cultural claims, land claims, and dealing with abuses, historical abuses, and how we write those. And the political branch has, of course, been very involved in that. Where we'll go in the future, I'm sure there is going to be a continuation of rights claims, and they will take new forms and fashions, and we'll continue to see interesting developments. And the whole process of reconciliation on which we are engaged is part of this, of course. That raises new questions of compromise, of recognition, and so on, which will continue to come before the courts.
As Canadians, obviously, we have to look critically at our past. But of course, as you mentioned previously, you take pride in the values that we do share as a nation. I wonder if you might discuss, as the former Chief Justice of Canada, as someone who performed the duties of the Governor General while she was incapacitated at one point, what does Canada mean to you?
Oh, well, everything. Like, as for most Canadians, I think it's part of the fiber of my being. And lately, when we've been provoked to think about the possibility of, people threatening our Canadian identity, it has become all the more precious to me. Uh, my values, my way of thinking about justice and fairness. All of these are are very much Canadian and distinct from other societies.
Young Canadians from coast to coast, many in Scouts, they're itching to give back to their communities. They want to make a difference on the world around them. They want to make a positive change. With your work in the judiciary, as we mentioned, with Indigenous rights especially, you have in many ways made that positive change. I wonder what advice you have to young Canadians who might be watching this. How can they make their positive mark?
Well, the world is rapidly changing, exponentially changing, and there are going to be so many issues and so many important decisions to make in all fields, from AI to governance to health, to how we teach and live together. uh, I think that there are just going to be so many issues that need to be tackled, so many things that need to be changed or built. And I would say always keep in your mind that you're building the best society you can. And it's up to you, because people of my generation won't be there. And we've perhaps laid some foundations, but it's going to be a new and different world requiring the expertise of young people who are now in the Scouts and in our schools.
For our volunteers, maybe as a final question, they are tasked in many ways with helping youth find what they're passionate about, helping young people become the citizens and the leaders that
Right.
Canada needs them to be. What advice would you have for mentors helping young people today?
Well, encourage. First of all, I think you're quite right to say you have to find what you're passionate about, and the
Mm.
first job of mentoring is to recognize those passions and then bring them out, and then support the execution. There's a stage of bringing the passions to light. There's the stage maybe of deciding on a certain course, and then there's a stage of support, and helping in whatever way you can that person achieve what they can and what they want to do.
Justice McLachlin, thank you so very much for sharing your time with us. I know your story will resonate with many of our
Thank
viewers and
you.
also your advice, of course, for young people.
Well, I just want to wish all your people, your young people watching, all the best, and thank them for their interest in our society and our country, and making our great country even better. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. And to everyone at home, thanks so much for joining us. Our next episode is going to be in a week with another great Canadian who uses their talents to the fullest. After this next episode, they're going to become bi-weekly episodes, but don't worry because in the fall, we'll be back to regular weekly programming again. I very much look forward to seeing you then and learning about another Canadian who uses their talents to the fullest for the common good. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Justice McLachlin, for joining us.
Thank you.